Happy to be joined by Suzie Ungerleider, chatting about your brand new album, your 11th studio album, which was just released earlier this year, Among the Evergreens. 11 studio albums. That's an accomplishment just in itself, Suzie. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's weird. I guess I'm old now.
No. But tell me, how has it been going? You know, it's been getting some incredible reviews. It's been out for a few months. So what are you hearing? How are you feeling since the release of the new album?
I'm feeling really good. Yeah, I'm amazed at the attention that the record's been getting since there's millions of songs being released all the time. So I never take anything for granted. Uncut reviewed it, made the record Americana Album of the Month for June, and Mojo also gave it great review. Next Magazine in Toronto, Spill, Great Dark Wonder, which is a great little indie kind of reviewer site. And yeah, it's just been really nice because people are really connecting with it. I think because trying to be very revealing in a way, but I wasn't necessarily planning that. It just kind of happened.
From what I understand, the album's kind of divided into two parts, right? Kind of the then and now, the past and the present. You're touching on themes from and moments from throughout your whole life, right?
Yeah, it's true. And actually, it was funny because when I was writing the record, I sometimes I have a plan, but this one I didn't really have a plan. I just was writing what I felt needed to be expressed. And sometimes I don't even know if I'm going to release the songs because I've learned that sometimes it's just helpful for me to process things, to write about it and to sing about it, and to know that maybe I won't be publicly performing these things. It helps me to free myself to just do what I want, because I think that inner critic is the worst. I've battled with it for years. So trying to get rid of that and thinking, well, you know what? Maybe no one will hear this. It's okay. Maybe it's just for you. As it turned out, these songs ended up not being just for me. And I didn't really plan it, but I noticed that there's a narrative on it, with the songs being like chapters in a book or something, where, you know, it's coming from my teenage years, going through, you know, courtship with my husband, and then illness and having a kid, and then being up until the present and dealing with rejoicing in having a grown-up child who might be launching soon.
Your songs are really described, you know, as evocative and atmospheric, which draws the listeners into your world, that personal world that you just talked about. But it's also very universally relatable. So would you say that's accurate, Suzie? And is that something that you kind of strive for with your music?
I'm kind of selfish in my writing in that I just think about what I'm interested in, even though, yes, of course, I really want people to connect with it. But I think the best way to do that for me is to just feel like, am I connecting with it? And then if I am, it will maybe resonate with others. So, yeah, I mean, I wrote a record a few years ago about growing up in Vancouver, and it was very specific. You know, I referenced a lot of bands and venues and places that are very specific to Vancouver, but it was cool because people were like, hey, I had the same thing, but I was in New Jersey, or I was in Ontario, or, you know, and so it really made me realize like that those specific things really make everybody reflect on their own specific touchstones, you know. And I've always enjoyed like writers like Joel Plaskett or Sarah Harmer, or people like that who really do get specific in their words and where they're located and what they're talking about. And it never has stopped me from relating to what they did. So yeah, I'm just kind of being inspired by that right now.
Probably a good lesson for all of us to hear about, especially this day and age with a lot of division out there and that sort of thing. But it's nice to hear if you're writing about a specific place and a specific time in your own circumstance, wherever you are in the world, you know, someone all the way across the world can relate to that. So that's something we should all kind of take to heart, I think, a little bit. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Human beings, we are
absolutely
quite similar across the board.
So as I mentioned too, you've gotten glowing international reviews on this album. As you mentioned, you know, the album really, you know, is divided up into chapters, but, you know, personally for your career, this is kind of a powerful chapter in your evolution, I guess, as an artist, as a storyteller. And a piece that really jumped out to me that I read, one of the reviews, that you're a woman returning home to yourself. So what does that last line mean to you, Suzie? And you know, from what I understand, I guess it's literal in a sense about coming home. But what does that line mean to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I could go on about that because I think when I was a kid, I really always felt like, even though I grew up in Vancouver, I was born in the States and my parents were Americans, and it always felt like we were just here temporarily, maybe. And that, we weren't really that different, but there was this feeling of, I'm not from here. In a kind of maybe snobby way. And I don't know why, but just feeling like, oh, my parents lived in New York and California, and I want to go somewhere exciting and fun. And Vancouver in those days was very backwater. It was, it wasn't really known. It wasn't an international city in the way that everybody knows about it now. It really felt small, and it's still kind of a village. And so this idea of like, you need to go away and explore and do something exciting elsewhere was really something that I was reaching for. And I think it was a family tradition, frankly, that people would leave their homes and go somewhere and make a name for themselves or do something interesting. And so I did that. I went to Toronto and got immersed in the music scene there. I had a lot of trouble admitting to people or showing myself as a singer when I was younger. I was very embarrassed and kind of shy and vulnerable didn't want to expose myself. So it really took like adopting this persona of Susanna, which is what I used to perform by, and also moving away that helped me to immerse myself in music and kind of have that as a thing that I was known for. But as time went on, I kind of missed the other part of myself, or I wanted to merge those two things, my personal life or who I am with my musical self. And I ended up being very homesick. I wrote this record about growing up in Vancouver, and then I moved back because I was realizing how homesick I was, and I wanted to explore what the city meant to me now. Even though when I was young, I really couldn't wait to get away. But with all this rich experience of being in Ontario and meeting all kinds of amazing people, meeting my husband, having a child, and just having a whole community in Toronto and also across the country, because when you tour, you get to meet people and connect. So I decided maybe we should go back and try it out. And I've been here since 2019. And it really has opened up a lot of stories for me, because wherever I go, I have all these memories about growing up here. I relish in the nostalgia. It might not be everybody's bag, but I love, kind of going, what happened on this street corner? And now what is it? It's like there's a huge glassy building, but I remember there was like a warehouse here and we used to see bands and, like things like that where you're just kind of remembering things through rose-colored glasses, honestly, because I was not all that happy all the time. But there is this kind of warmth of feeling like we lived through something, we did something, and it was fun, and there's a lot of stories.
I took note of you mentioning about, growing up in Vancouver and needing to get away. I remember being a teenager and just starting to go away to school, and I always had a thought in my head, like growing up in southwestern Ontario, went to Brock University in St. Catharines. I always had it in the back of my mind. I was like, I want to go to Vancouver, in order to get away and make it, kind of thing, or start your own journey. And it's just funny to hear you tell that story about needing to get away from Vancouver. You know what I mean? So that's again, it's just like that universal thing. I'm sure a lot of people that, want to get into, whether it's music or anything creative, or there's always that sense of needing to get away. But it's great to hear you talk about wanting to come home and going home and reflecting on that, some of those little things that maybe you took for granted, as you were growing up, but over time, it's been able to grow into a good memory, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
Talk to me a little bit about making the album. The album was produced by longtime collaborator Jim Bryson. So tell me a little bit about the process of creating this new album. Where was it recorded? Who played on it? And how did it all go?
I really have to credit Jim Bryson, who's a singer-songwriter who's based in Ottawa, with really pushing me to get more personal in my music. Early on, I was very much drawn to kind of a folk tradition of telling a story of someone else or writing in character. And he really was the person who was like, that's BS. Don't be fake, Suzie. He really was like, I want to hear your stories. And I always thought, well, my stories aren't all that interesting. And maybe that's okay. Alice Munro made a career of writing about things that are everyday. It took me a long time to realize that the ordinary, or what seemingly ordinary, can be very fascinating. And Jim really helped me kind of get closer to that. So I decided I didn't really want to wait till all the songs were done and in order to start recording. So we recorded over a few sessions at his studio in Stittsville, Ontario, which is near Ottawa. He's got this backyard. Stittsville's a funny place because it's kind of a strip mall land, and a lot of bungalows or McMansions that are there, bedroom community for Ottawa. But his place is kind of old school bungalow, but in the back, it's a huge backyard. It has all these wild cedars. Like it's crazy, full of trees. And it hasn't been clear cut. It's kind of incredible. So we're in a beautiful kind of Scandinavian feeling studio, small, but high ceilings and earthy and feeling great. And, did a few sessions there. But he was like, I really think it's so important now that you're in Vancouver and these songs are quite inspired by Vancouver. Let's go to Vancouver and invite some of your Vancouver compatriots onto the record. So we came out here and we recorded again in another kind of suburban home studio surrounded by trees, finish with inviting, first of all, Cam Giroux, my husband's playing drums on it, and he was sort of involved from day one. And then when we brought some of the songs back and invited Jeremy Holmes on bass and Paul Rigby on guitar and banjo and other instruments. Chris Woodstra was the guy who engineered it out here. And it really was fun to kind of have this Ontario and Vancouver. Again, I wasn't necessarily doing this self-consciously, but it was this feeling of tying these two places that are really like home to me together. And the album is reflecting that. Songs that are set in Ontario and songs that are set in Vancouver are on the record. So it all tied together really nicely.
I read a quote from you, and it said, "There's nothing like experiencing the energy of the people in the room, all listening and feeling together. It is the musical communion that really makes the songs complete." I thought that was a great quote, and you're going to be going on tour in Ontario and Quebec. Is that something you're going to strive for? Is that something that you'll reflect on at the end of the tour, that these songs will be complete now?
Well, songs are cool because they change and evolve. Even if the structure in the song is the same, it changes within, who's listening to it and how that's being received. And the room, what does the room look like? It affects how I'm performing the song as well. And that's so important. It feels like, a cycle that you start out alone. Well, at least for me, I start out alone, thinking my thoughts and then writing the song. And then I slowly kind of open the door and let someone else see it. And that's usually, the producer or my fellow musicians. And then you record it. And it still feels like a little club, like who's heard this? It's very intimate. It's almost like this kind of gestation period, birthing. People use the birth metaphor about releasing records. And it seems like a cliche, but it's true. Like you have this kind of thing where it's developing and growing and evolving, and you don't really even know what it is you've made until people hear it. And they can tell you what you've made and what it means to them. And you're kind of feeling it. Like when you're playing a song in a room, you're feeling it with the people. And it helps me reconnect with them and also reconnect with what the song is about. It's a really exciting exchange of energy. And I love these really tiny shows that I do where it's very personal. I can probably meet and greet most of the people who want to do that. Yeah, I love that very immediate connection that I have with people when I'm in a room with them. And then I love it also when people kind of heckle in a lovely way, like I might be telling a story, and as you can tell, I'm not very brief with my rambling on, but like I might be telling a story or trying to give context to the song, and then someone might yell something or do something, and it kind of becomes part of the whole lore. Yeah, I just want people to know like how much their presence really changes and affects what artists do.
I love how you first were describing these songs, how you're basically thinking to yourself that, oh, this is just me. This isn't going to go anywhere. But that evolution that you mentioned about, putting on an album and then like sending it out. But yeah, you don't, unless you read some feedback or sit with someone listening to it for the first time, you're not going to get that connection until you're live, until you're sitting up on stage and performing it, that you're really going to see that the impact of the music and the words and that sort of thing. So that's a beautiful description. Is there any places, I guess, with your connection all across Canada, really, but is there some shows that you're looking forward to the most, that places that you're returning to, or maybe some places that you haven't performed at yet that you're excited for the most?
I'm going to a little venue in Montreal, Petit Ours, and I've never been there, but I heard it's really great, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to Redbird, which is a beautiful Ottawa venue, very comfortable, cozy, but elegant at the same time. Hugh's room in Toronto is always a pleasure. It's in a nice, beautiful old church now. London at the Aeolian Hall. I love, actually, every single show has its charms, and if I've been there before, I can kind of picture it and have a smile on my face, because I normally wouldn't go and play somewhere that I'll be like, I think that's a sports bar or something like that. It's got to be a nice listening room. It's hard to single out the thing that I love, the variety, basically. Like if you're at a certain level of fame and fortune, most venues you play will have a similarity and kind of a sameness to them. And if you're on a bus, everything can kind of meld together. But if you're at grassroots level, like I am, every day is quite different. And that's the pleasure of it.
Who do you think will have the best hecklers, as you mentioned before?
Ooh. Well, I like to tease Ottawa because I like to play on their kind of civil servant, well-behaved character, which I think inspires them to say something naughty. But I don't know. I'll have to see. I'll report back. But Montreal, I imagine there might be a few off-colored remarks, maybe in French. I don't even know. I think also Toronto, I have so many friends, so people that know me might yell out and try to
throw you off a little.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Well, I'll tell you what, Suzie, we're excited about the release of Among the Evergreens, and anybody can go check it out right now. It's streaming everywhere, and all the tour dates that we talked about, all the ticket details can be found on your website online. And Suzie, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
It was my pleasure, Aaron. It was great to talk to you.